Picture this. Somewhere in the Sahara, a motorcycle covered in dust kicks up sand under a scorching sun. 500,000 miles on the odometer. Original engine. Still running. Not a museum piece. An active machine. Crossing deserts, jungles, war zones. Japanese engineers didn't just build motorcycles, they built legends. Machines so tough, mechanics started calling them mechanical cockroaches because they simply refused to die. Today we're uncovering 12 Japanese adventure bikes engineered to outlast empires. And number one, it's out there right now, rolling through conflict zones while others sit broken in repair shops. Let's ride. Number 12, Kawasaki KLR650, 1987 to 2018. In 1987, Kawasaki accidentally invented the cast iron skillet of motorcycles. Simple, indestructible, still relevant decades later. This wasn't just a bike, it was a middle finger to planned obsolescence. The 652 cubic centimeter single-cylinder thumper is basically a tractor engine, someone convinced to power a motorcycle, running on anything flammable. 200,000 miles maintained with thoughts and prayers, with some owners reporting 250,000 miles without major rebuilds. The US Marines bought them because they needed something unkillable. And 20 years later, those military bikes are still running, still serving, still refusing to quit. The magic was in the simplicity. A carburetor you could clean with a toothbrush and a 6.1-gallon tank good for 400 miles of uninterrupted riding. In Africa, delivery riders call them forever bikes because they survive conditions that destroy military vehicles: mud, sand, heat, neglect. Adventure riders love the KLR because it's forgiving. Drop it in a river, dry it out, and keep going. The steel frame bends instead of breaking, and the simple design means you can fix almost anything with basic tools and determination. The KLR didn't just endure, it thrived where others died, becoming the backbone of adventure touring and proving that complexity is the enemy of reliability. Number 11, Yamaha XT600, 1983 to 2003. Yamaha looked at good enough and said, "Not for us," building the XT600 like the last motorcycle standing after the apocalypse. The 595 cubic centimeter air-cooled single wasn't fancy or smooth, but it was immortal, covering 180,000 miles on fuel that would make modern bikes weep and refuse to start. Some dedicated owners have pushed these machines past 200,000 miles with nothing more than oil changes and occasional valve adjustments. The Red Cross bought hundreds because humanitarian workers in Africa and Asia needed bikes that could handle roads that were more suggestion than surface, and these machines got dropped into villages with no mechanics and ran for years. The kickstart-only model became legend. No electric starter to fail, no battery to die, just a kick lever and your right leg. The genius was in what Yamaha didn't include. No fragile electronics, no complex fuel injection, just carburetors that drank anything resembling gasoline and air cooling that never needed coolant replacement. The XT600 taught riders self-reliance because when you're 500 miles from civilization and something breaks, you learn to fix it. European adventure riders called it the thinking person's adventure bike because it rewarded skill over technology, proving that engineering by subtraction works beautifully when done right. Number 10, Honda XR650L, 1993 to 2023. Honda studied the dual sport market in 1993 and built something that could commute to your office and conquer Baja on the weekend. Not the fastest or lightest, but engineered to outlive presidential administrations. The 644 cubic centimeter air-cooled single was Honda's answer to one question. What if we made an engine so reliable, mechanics would find it boring? Owners crossed 200,000 plus miles with maintenance consisting mostly of oil changes, and the engine was so under stress that highway cruising at 70 miles per hour felt like a gentle warm-up. For 30 years, Honda barely changed it, while others added traction control and software updates requiring dealer visits. Desert racers loved it because you could crash hard, pick it up, and keep racing, while postal workers in rural Australia chose it because mail routes demand reliability over flash. The electric start was legendary for its reliability, firing at -20 degrees Fahrenheit or 120 degrees Fahrenheit without hesitation. Off-road, the 21-inch front wheel and 10 inches of suspension travel-handled technical trails, while on-road it was comfortable enough for 300-mile days. The XR650L didn't excel at anything specific, it was just competent at everything. When Honda discontinued it in 2023, riders mourned like losing a family member who never asked for anything and never let you down. And used prices jumped immediately. Number 9, Suzuki DR650, 1990 to present. In 1990, Suzuki engineers asked themselves, what if we built a bike so reliable it makes Swiss watches look fragile? And then they actually did it. The 644 cubic centimeter single-cylinder thumper is a brick with a throttle. Simple, effective, nearly impossible to destroy. These motors hit 180,000 miles maintained by people whose mechanical knowledge begins and ends with righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and Suzuki has barely changed it in 35 years. The 2024 model is essentially identical to 1996, proving that when you've achieved perfection, why tamper with success? The DR650 became the bike of adventure riders who value reliability over bragging rights, crossing Africa, South America, and Asia, not because it was exciting, but because it was dependable. Aid organizations and documentary filmmakers choose it because drama is for TV, not transportation. The 4-gallon tank delivers 200 miles of range, and the 36-inch seat height with upright ergonomics makes 500-mile days manageable without destroying your back. What sets the DR650 apart is its $7,000 price tag, making mechanical reliability accessible to students, young riders, and budget-conscious adventurers who can't afford $15,000 adventure bikes, democratizing long-distance touring and proving that quality doesn't require a premium price. Number 8. Honda Africa Twin XR750, 1990 to 2003. Honda looked at the Paris-Dakar rally and said, "Let's build a bike that can win this race, then commute for the next 20 years." And they overbuilt it so hard that accounting probably sent angry emails. The 742 cubic centimeter V-twin didn't just work, it took personal offense to the idea of breaking down, regularly crossing 200,000 miles on fuel ranging from questionable to, "Is this even gasoline?" Every component was tested to destruction, then redesigned stronger, and the shaft drive was bulletproof. No chains to adjust every 500 miles, no sprockets to replace every 15,000 miles, just smooth, maintenance-free power delivery that lasted lifetimes. Adventure riders who measured trips in years made it their mount. And in Australia, where distances are measured in "hope you brought fuel," the Africa Twin became folklore. The 23-liter fuel tank delivered 300-plus miles of range, critical when fuel stops are 250 miles apart, and riders disappeared into the outback for months while their bikes barely looked bothered. The suspension was rally-derived with 43mm front forks offering 220mm travel, setup that ate rough roads, corrugations, and rocky trails without complaint. Production ended in 2003, and prices immediately climbed because riders recognized the Africa Twin as the last truly simple big-bore adventure bike Honda built before electronics took over. Number 7. Yamaha Ténéré 700, 2019 to present. In 2019, Yamaha's engineers apparently time-traveled to the 1980s, studied what made adventure bikes indestructible, then returned to build the Ténéré 700. Modern tech meeting old-school soul. The 689 cubic centimeter parallel twin is a masterpiece of deliberate restraint, where Yamaha took a high-performance engine, stripped out stressed components, added stronger parts, and created something making 72 horsepower while operating at 60% capacity. Already crossing 100,000 miles despite being barely 5 years old, the bike proves that longevity comes from intelligent engineering, not just robust materials. Yamaha kept it simple in an age of electronic overload. No radar cruise control, no 17 riding modes, no smartphone app, just a bike, basic ABS, and the horizon waiting ahead. The steel frame weighs 15 pounds more than aluminum alternatives, but proves indestructible. Drop it 50 times and it'll bend slightly and keep going. Rally teams are using them in extreme events, finishing races that destroy bikes costing 3 times more, with the 2024 Rally du Maroc seeing 15 Ténéré 700S compete and 12 finish, an 80% completion rate that embarrassed bikes with $25,000 price tags. It's proof you don't need complexity or excessive power. You need intention, reliability, and a bike that works every single time you thumb the starter. Number 6. Honda XL650V Transalp, 1987 to 2000. The Transalp was the bike nobody asked for, but everybody needed. Released when adventure bikes were either massive expensive beasts or stripped dirt bikes. The Transalp was neither. It was just right, like Goldilocks found the perfect motorcycle. The 583 cubic centimeter V-twin, borrowed from African rally bikes and detuned into near immortality, crossed 180,000 miles while sipping fuel like an economy car and producing 50 horsepower with Honda smoothness that made 400-mile days feel easy. It wasn't trying to win the Dakar. It was designed for real people taking real trips on real roads. European police forces bought thousands because they needed bikes that wouldn't fail during 12-hour shifts, and courier services relied on them because daily 200-mile routes demand reliability, not excitement. The Transalp became the choice for riders who actually use their adventure bikes for adventures, not Instagram photo shoots. The 17-liter fuel tank delivered 250 miles of range. The 815-pound curb weight felt light and flickable, and the 32.3-inch seat height welcomed riders of all sizes. What made the Transalp legendary was its role as the everyman's adventure bike. Costing $5,500 new, it was accessible to young riders and budget-conscious adventurers, teaching an important lesson that adventure isn't about the bike's capability, but the rider's willingness to go. Number 5. Kawasaki KLR650 Tengai, 1989 to 1990. Kawasaki took the immortal KLR650 and asked, what if we made it more indestructible? Creating the Tengai, rally capability wrapped in KLR reliability, with only 1,000 made, making it rarer than common sense. Same bulletproof 652 cubic centimeter single, but now with long travel suspension offering 260 millimeters front and 240 millimeters rear that transform rough terrain from punishment into poetry, plus a massive 23-liter fuel tank, meaning 500+ miles of range, 200,000 miles carrying loads that would break pack mules. The Tengai was designed for the Paris-Dakar rally, but ended up with riders who actually needed that capability. In Australia and Africa, these rare machines became myth, crossing distances planned in weeks, not hours, with rally suspension that ate rough roads for breakfast. The rally fairing provided wind protection that standard KLRS lacked, and the 35-inch seat height, though intimidating, was necessary for the suspension travel. What made the Tengai special wasn't just capability, it was that KLR reliability wrapped in a package designed for serious expeditions where you could crash it, drop it, abuse it, and it would fire up the next morning asking for more. Finding a Tengai today is like discovering buried treasure that can still cross the Sahara after 20 years in a garage, with collectors paying $8,000 to $12,000 for clean examples because they recognize rarity combined with capability. Number 4. Suzuki DR-Z400S, 2000 to 2021. Suzuki held a meeting and someone said, what if we built a bike small enough to throw around like a dirt bike, but tough enough to ride to Alaska? And then they actually built it, creating a legend. The 398 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled single was engineered with beautiful simplicity, hitting 150,000 miles maintained by people who think valve adjustment is a yoga pose, while producing 39 horsepower with crisp throttle response. Light enough to pick up after crashes at 300 to 17 pounds dry weight, reliable enough to trust in wilderness thousands of miles from help, with electric start that fired in conditions ranging from -10 degrees Fahrenheit mornings to 110 degrees Fahrenheit desert heat. Commute weekdays, single-track weekends, occasionally ride 500 miles to camping spots requiring both pavement and dirt capability. This was the DR-Z's promise, and it delivered flawlessly. Adventure riders chose the DR-Z400S for technical routes where 450-pound bikes would struggle, with the 36.8-inch seat height and 310-pound wet weight staying manageable. The suspension was excellent. 47mm Showa forks with 280mm travel handling rocky single track, sand washes, and route-strewn forest trails with equal competence. What really set the DR-Z apart was its dual identity. Strip off the lights and you had an enduro racer, add luggage and you had an adventure tourer. One bike, two personalities, zero compromises on reliability. Proving adventure doesn't require 1,000cc engines or 500-pound weights. Number 3. Honda XR650R, 2000 to 2007. The XR650R was what happened when Honda decided street legal was more suggestion than rule. Creating a desert racing weapon, they grudgingly made street legal by bolting on the bare minimum. The 649 cubic centimeter air-cooled single was a monster with over-square design featuring 100mm bore and 82mm stroke, high 10.5 to 1 compression, and built to survive conditions that would make other bikes file restraining orders. 180,000 miles of being thrashed through deserts at 90 miles per hour, jumped off dunes, crashed, picked up, and ridden home became the norm for these indestructible machines. Baja Racing made it legendary with the Baja 1000 miles miles of high-speed desert, racing through terrain resembling Mars, becoming the XR650Rs, proving ground where these bikes maintained 80+ miles per hour for hours. Too much bike for most people with 280 pounds dry weight and an aggressive engine producing 58 horsepower that peaked at 7,000 RPM, but perfect for those who needed ultimate capability. The suspension was stiff enough to jar fillings loose on pavement. 49mm Showa forks with 12 inches of travel tuned for 80 miles per hour. Whoops, not commuting. What made the XR650R special was Honda's refusal to compromise, leaving it raw with aggressive carburetor jetting, explosive power delivery, and race-spec suspension, where you adapted to the bike, not the other way around. Number 2. Yamaha XT600Z Ténéré, 2008 to 2016. Yamaha's XT660Z Ténéré was built for riders who understood adventure isn't found in parking lots, channeling decades of Paris-Dakar rally experience. 6 consecutive wins from 1987 to 1992 to create something that could genuinely go anywhere. The 660 cubic centimeter single was a masterpiece of torque and reliability, covering 170,000 miles while sipping fuel at 50 to 60 miles per gallon and making enough low-end grunt to pull tree stumps. Peak torque at 5,500 RPM meant no need to chase redline. Just roll on throttle and go, with highway cruising at 75 miles per hour, feeling like the engine was barely awake. What made the XT660Z special was Yamaha's attention to real-world adventure, touring with a 23-liter fuel tank, meaning 300+ miles of range, and a steel frame that could take beatings aluminum couldn't handle. The 21-inch front wheel handled everything from highways at 80 miles per hour to goat trails barely 2 feet wide, with 43mm forks offering 210mm travel that absorbed rocks and ruts effortlessly. European adventure riders embraced it because it offered capability without complexity. No chain drive to maintain, just shaft drive that would outlive civilizations. Rally teams used them in amateur competitions where they'd finish while bikes costing twice as much were being loaded onto trucks. And the $10,000 price point democratized serious adventure touring, proving you didn't need $20,000 to cross Africa. Number 1. Honda XR400R, 1996 to 2004. At the top sits the Honda XR400R, and nothing else even comes close for pure, unbreakable reliability combined with go-anywhere capability. This wasn't built to last forever. It was engineered to survive being crashed, jumped, ridden through hell, and keep running like nothing happened. The 397 cubic centimeter air-cooled single was agricultural equipment masquerading as a motorcycle motor, regularly hitting 200,000 miles with 300,000 miles not uncommon, and documented examples still running strong after decades of abuse with original engines and original transmissions. Adventure riders crossing continents chose it over bigger, fancier machines. Enduro racers won championships, and desert riders trusted it for remote expeditions where failure meant serious danger. The simplicity was poetry. Air-cooled engine with manual decompression lever, carburetor you could rebuild with 4 basic tools, and steel frame surviving crashes that would total other bikes. These bikes crossed the Australian outback on 2,000-mile journeys, the African savanna covering 10,000 miles through brutal conditions, and South American jungles where humidity corrodes electronics, but the XR just kept firing up. What really set the XR400R apart was its role as the bike of choice for riders who needed absolute reliability. Not bragging rights or Instagram photos, just mechanical honesty that fired every single time you kicked that starter. The XR400R became a symbol of mechanical immortality and trust, representing an era when motorcycles were built to last lifetimes, not model years. And today, owners refuse to sell because they're holding something irreplaceable that will outlive them. That's your countdown. 12 Japanese adventure bikes built to last forever. Which one shocked you most? Drop your pick in the comments, hit subscribe, and remember, quality engineering isn't just timeless, it's eternal.